So I'm excited to be here. I had met Gary on LinkedIn, right? Isn't that the thing to just social media, the power of it? I have written a book, so I am an author of Permission to Be Rich, and I'm a money financial empowerment coach. And so I've been working with people for over, God, 10 years now doing this, but I've also been in the financial industry for over 20 years now. And I've found a lot of money getting in the way of people going for the dreams and the things that they want. And so for the past 10 years, I've just really dedicated my business to dismantling that and the illusion and using what I call like a logical and magical kind of mix to help people with money. And the logical part of it just really being about how to manage your finances, because it's another thing that's not being taught often is financial literacy. So especially for you all who are like coming out of college or school or going into a first job, like you get some skills, but if you don't go into an accounting or something specific, or your family isn't teaching it to you, you're not really taught how to deal with money. And yet money is the one thing that we all need to know and be an expert in. So it kind of not set up to win also. And also when you go into like a financial advisor or accountants, they deal with money in a very specific way that's geared towards taxes and for your future. But again, not towards how do you spend your money? What ways are to do things in your everyday life so that you're just setting up yourself up to win? And then on the flip side of that, I've seen people who have mastered that part of it, like the logical side of it, and have their money set, their budgets, but they still live in what I call scarcity. They're still afraid that their money is going to run out. And so this is when I apply like the magical side of it. So think The Secret, manifesting, mindset, just all of that stuff. So for me, when it comes to money, you have to know the practical side, the financial literacy, but also have a positive mindset around money and focusing on all the opportunities that are there. And when you bring those two together, you kind of hit this money sweet spot that exists that I feel like not a lot of people are talking about. And so that is what I want to share with you all today, especially that you're just starting to put your foot into the world. And
That
yeah, the
the
world right
bit
now is a little bit of a crazy place. I feel like for anyone who has always started, there's always been a bump. I know that when I first started out, and I'm 40 years old for transparency. So just when like in 2000, I graduated high school, and there were no jobs and you couldn't get this. And I know now we have the pandemic, inflation is completely crazy. So I'm not denying that there aren't obstacles in the way. However, what I am going to teach is if you focus on the problem and not the solution, all you're going to find is more of the problem. And if you focus more on the solution, it's interesting how the information that starts to come to you is the solution for you to get through the problem, because there's always going to be problems. Everyone has always had a problem. It's just a matter of what it is that you're focusing on. And just brief background on me and like how I got into this and just what it is that I do. Like I said, I've been in the financial industry for over 20 years. I wanted to be in business all my life. Like I always loved money, like obsessed with it, thought it was the greatest thing. Got out of college. I went to Pace University. And so I graduated with a bachelor's degree in business management, and I minored in psychology because I always thought, if you're going to deal with business, you really need to know how people work. It kind of goes hand in hand. And just chase the money. I wanted to rule, get to the top of the thing, make the most amount of money. That was my game plan. And I followed that script for about a better part of my 20s. I was in real estate before the crash. And then I went into a nonprofit and I was a financial assistant director for there for a little bit. And I hit 29 years old and I just realized like this formula wasn't working for me. I was constantly chasing a salary and a certain amount of money. And that's all. I wasn't asking, am I happy? And at this job at 29 years old, I could find myself getting pains shooting down my arm. And I was like, what's happening? Why am I this stressed out? And I realized I was just really good at what I do. Organizing is another great thing. And so I would just be getting more responsibility. I just wanted to please and say yes. And so I was stressing myself out. And so at 29, I was just saying, hey, if I make more money, I'm just going to keep taking on more stress. Like that's the exchange. And so that's the relationship that I had with money. And at 29, I decided, you know what, if I work this hard for myself, I'm going to give it a go and I'm going to start working for myself. And so it is then that I decided to save, come up with the plan. This is what I'm going to talk about later on, is like, how do you practically set yourself up to have certain things and set yourself up to win? I was like, I'm going to save, I'm going to need 6 months to live. Once I have that amount of money, I'm going to quit my job and I'm gonna start my own thing. I'm gonna really start doing something that made me happy. And this is where I came to the switch of it's not about chasing the money because you're always just, what do they say? It's about the journey, not the destination. And I was just living for the destination. When I make $80,000, when I get this car, when I buy this house, and I had the checklist and I knocked them all out. And then I would get there and just be unfulfilled. It was for one day when it happened. And then after that, here we go. Here's the chase again. And I'm like, at 29, I'm already burnt out. Like, I have a lot of my life ahead of me. Like, something has to change. This isn't sustainable, right? And I feel like this is a lot of the script that we have been given. It was also what was passed down from my parents. Like, I'm first generation. Both of my parents are from Italy. And so I feel like when it comes from immigrants too, there is this mindset of like, you work one job, you do what's safe. And it's like, taking risks aren't always rewarded. And so at 29, I was like, I'm gonna go off of my own script. And my parents thought I was out of my mind when I told them that I was gonna quit my job, who wasn't firing me, from a nonprofit. And I was like, I'm going to be an organizer. I was like, I want to be a professional organizer. I was like, I think it's an amazing job. I love organizing. On my worst days, I love just sitting there and doing that. And I think that that's something that we could ask ourselves, especially coming out of college. I think it's, or just out of school, having your first job. It's good to get a pay and just start saving and having a certain amount, but also allowing yourself to be curious as to like, is this something that I want to do? Do I enjoy this? And even if it's something that you don't, taking in that information, because what I've learned too is like what we have in our mind or what I have had in my mind when I actually do it in the everyday doesn't always match up. So it could seem like a really nice dream in your mind. And then in actuality, when doing it, it's not always the same thing. So like going for what you want, finding out what these things are. And so like making mistakes are pretty common. And I think the thing to do in the 20s is to kind of just allow your curiosity to go. So as I started my own business, this is where the money part really started to come in. I didn't want to be working with money anymore because I was like, I don't want to be a part of that world. But as I started to go into people's homes and organize their homes, I would realize that they were really, really stressed out about money. It wasn't so much about the disorganization or they had too much of stuff. I'd find things with price tags, duplicates of things. But the theme that I would find was that people were like, I don't have money. I don't have money to save. I don't have money to go on vacation. I don't have money to go out with my friends. And yet I'm going around their homes and I'm just seeing duplicates of things. And my mind is just doing what it does. My dad's an electrical engineer. I have an engineering mind. My number crunching mind in the background was just going crazy. Like, this is all extra money that could be used. And so I started asking the question, like, do you know what your expenses are? Do you know what your income is? Do you know what your numbers are? And the theme was that they weren't. And so I always thought that everyone just knew how to budget. I always did. And I just thought that that was a natural thing. I mean, at this point, still young, money's not something that you talk about. So even if, I didn't know this and I was old enough, that's the other myth that I'm here to break. It's a taboo topic. But if it's a taboo topic, how are you ever going to learn how it is and how to come together with it? It doesn't need to be. And so as I started to talk to people about their money, they would just start sharing that they didn't know how to organize it. They didn't even know what their numbers were. And so my business started to turn into, instead of organizing their homes, it was more of like financial organization and organizing their numbers into spreadsheets. And the really cool thing that happened was I started to see that like money was this linchpin. I would be home and they would text me a picture and all of a sudden they've organized their home on their own. Their closet was done and like, oh, you made me realize how much money I'm spending on things that I don't need. And now that could go towards my vacation funds. Of course, I don't want to spend it in that way. Now recognizing how their spending impacts the things that they want and just looking at it intentionally. And so from there, I personally started organizing people. I would go into even businesses and do organizing. And then I would realize they didn't have their QuickBooks set up. So carbon copy that for a business. There were no receivables, no payables. How do you run your business this way? And so I started setting that up. And as I started to go along, like I said, I saw a theme going. I would set up their system, but every couple of months, I would go back and they would fall back into the same pattern again. So it wasn't, the system itself wasn't enough. So the budgets are great to have. And like I said, and if you run your own business, having your numbers, however you want to do it through a software or through a spreadsheet is super important. However, it's not the only component. What then I started to realize that there are emotions that come in when we're dealing with money. The big ones, the guilt, the shame, are the two biggest when dealing with money. And so there was all of this surrounding it in what I call a money story. And so dealing with a mindset is the second component with having to deal with money. And then this is when I started to work with people around their beliefs around money. And what I really call is just like scarcity and abundance. You turn on the news, all they're ever going to tell you is everything that's going wrong. There's no good news channel. There's plenty of people out in the world doing magnificent, fabulous things. People who have a lot of money who are doing magnificent things with their money, but all they tend to focus on is all the bad, right? And I know, especially in the UK, you have your gas prices going up, and it's like going to be like a real problem that's happening, and you put that on. So again, not saying that these aren't real things. However, where's the good to combat that? So it's very easy in the world that we live in to live in what I call scarcity. And all scarcity really is just seeing all that doesn't exist, right? There isn't enough money. There isn't enough gas. There isn't enough. There isn't enough. There isn't enough jobs. And in the flip side of it, if you look at all the money that's circulating in the world, there's like, I think even 1.5 trillion circulating. There's more than enough money out there for all of us. So what I really want to get down is like when you focus on what is, then you start to get those opportunities. And so it's so easy in this world. Anywhere you go is just going to hammer down what doesn't exist. And so what I really want is for you to anchor into a mindset of abundance. And don't get me wrong, it's not airy-fairy. Everything is going to go right and ignore the things that are going on. No, it's just using your mind. It is the greatest tool that we have. Computers are based off of our brains. Like that is how insane our minds work. And so what we create in our reality is based off of our thoughts. So the things that we believe and that we see is actually what starts to get created in our minds. And so when you start to think like, oh, money, there are opportunities, there's things that I'm seeing, and they start to come in, then that's how the opportunities start to come your way. The other thing I say too, even if you don't believe me, it costs you nothing to try it. It is free. For you to dream, for you to believe in something different, costs you nothing. It's just time in putting it in. And so what I really press is instead of thinking, oh, there's no opportunities, instead, if you could just possibly flip it, okay, opportunities are on its way to me. And it's just that simple. It took a second to flip it. So flipping your mindset is a huge thing when doing that. And so, like I said, doing this for over 20 years, I just found that money kind of follows a pattern. And so, like I said, I wrote a book. This is what I teach with my clients. And I feel like there's a pathway that it goes through. And what I call them is like the 5 F's to financial freedom. And so really the 5 things to really focus on when it comes to money. The first step is focus, right? And here it's all about clarity with your numbers, which I discussed, right? It's really important to have clarity and to know what your numbers are so that you can make decisions from a clear place, right? And then once you move there, you step into the second phase, right? And that's foundation. And so here is where you start to build your money house and you start to build a structure. How do you have your account set up? If you have debt, do you have a plan for your debt? What are the strategies and the things that you're doing for your money so that they could start working from you? Because once you have this set up, it then moves you into freedom, right? And you start to be in freedom with your money. But the thing is with freedom, freedom comes when you start to take action, right? Without the action, everything just is a nice idea, a nice dream. So starting to take action on doing the things, if, like I said, protecting your mindset, thinking of positive statements every day. I always say 3 gratitudes every morning will instantly put you into a place of abundance. If you are spending money on your credit cards, like, are you following the plan when it comes to your debt and following the opportunities for you to get the jobs and just do the things, right? So it's just all about the action. And when the action doesn't happen, asking yourself, okay, like what's happening here? The other thing too, I want to just mention on action, it's okay if things don't happen. You just get back on the horse again when you get knocked off. It is completely normal and mistakes are normal. Mistakes and failures are meant to be celebrated because it means that you went for the thing, taking risks. Super, super important. It is meant to happen. So freedom is a really cool part. And that's why it's freedom. It's all of these things that we're told, keep it safe, don't do these things. It's actually what has you start creating the life that you really love and to create freedom with your money. And once you get into freedom, you move into flow. And what I call this one is this is really about sustainability, right? And how do you sustain the money habits that you created with your actions? And this is when it just comes down to mastering yourself, because we are the thing that controls money, right? In the world, Money has power. The more money, the more power, and all this, right? And then there's also negative beliefs. Money's the root of all evil. Money doesn't grow on trees. All these negative beliefs around money. However, money is actually neutral. Money has no power. It is the person yielding the money that either uses it for good or bad intentions. The other thing with money, money's not judging you, and money can't transform you. What you can do is start to use yourself as the tool to start using money in the life in the way that you want it. And I feel like once we get to this place, realizing that we cultivate our own happiness, and then money just brings convenience into our life. It can't create happiness. It can create moments of happiness when we first spend it. But at the end of the day, this is why so many people who have large amounts of money and then lose it also go into such a deep depression, is because the money has created the happiness versus really learning that you're the one who creates that for yourself, or else you're just living in an illusion. And so flow is really about sustainability, about really the free things in life are what matters. I feel like the pandemic had pointed that out to us, when it's all going down, you couldn't go to restaurants, you couldn't go outside. You started to realize how important touch was. You had a mask on, you couldn't even smile at someone, right? And just even these going outside in nature, that couldn't even happen. These are all things that are free, right? Our health. I know health insurance is a totally other topic, but how many times do we walk around taking for granted that we're healthy? And so I feel like this is what sustainability when it comes to our money is really all about, is like at the end of the day, when things get really bad, we get reminded that money isn't the solution to things, and like the love, the touch, and all these things that are for free, we undervalue. And those are the things that really matter, right? Money is just a convenience for that. And so that's what the flow part is. It's you really taking your power back from money. And then that brings you into what I call fun. If you're not having fun with your money, what's the point? Like it's just, I feel like, oh, when I retire, when I get this amount, when I do this, and it should be fun at all times. When I work with my clients, I designate a fun account. I believe at all times, fun should be something that you're doing currently and planning for in the future too. Like, so an abundance thing, it's no more either or, it's how do you create the and in your life? And it is possible to have both those things. And so, like I said, when it comes to money, they cycle through these phases and they keep going through them. So money isn't just this gray, this black and white thing. There's a lot of gray that exists in between it. And so, like I said, what I have found is that the world is just teaching it from a very patriarchal place, a place of control, a place to have fear when it comes to money. And really, it's just about, that's not really the intention of money. Money is a way for us to say thank you. If you really think about the origins of it and what it was created for. They used to barter, but it wasn't so convenient if you had a farmer who had livestock and then someone else who had textile. At a certain point, it's just not convenient to just exchange in those ways. They literally created money as an exchange to say, hey, thank you for your goods. This is my goods. But do you ever think that every time you're handing someone your money or even your debit card, that you're saying thank you for these goods and services? Every time you go get food and someone hands you the food, hey, thank you for that food. If you just do that, if you take nothing from what I say today, and you just change that one thing and realize that every time money is exchanged, it's a gratitude and it's a practice to say thank you, it would already just transform the way you look at money and actually the way it flows into your life as well. You have a job, your employer pays you. Thank you. You get into, oh, I should be getting more. But here's the thing, it's just at the baseline, looking at it as it is a way to say thank you, right? You could change how much more you get, but it's first starting from, right? Once you start to place your foundation of gratitude, more opportunities just start coming, right? If you just say, hey, this isn't enough, then all you're going to start seeing is that there isn't enough and just more ways in which your job sucks, instead of looking at the opportunities that you could possibly grow in it or maybe fulfill a task that will give you that thing. And so, again, this is just what I teach about money. And especially with where you all are, I was told like your age group is 18 to 24. So I just remember when I first started working and how I was actually really excited because I felt like for school for me was great. I wasn't a big school person. I liked it, but I wanted to learn from experience. And so I was super excited to get into the work world and just see what it was all about. And so what I would just say from this too, I said the whole thing about the gratitude thing. The other thing I would say too, save 10% of what you make. Savings is something that is so not promoted. You go marketing, they spend billions of dollars in marketing purposely to pay on your emotions, to make you think that you need these things and you don't. So a rule of thumb that's just out there, if you can, 10%, right? You get $200, put $20 in a bank account, put it under your pillow, put it in an envelope, whatever it is. That's actually what creates financial security for yourself, and how you're never going to feel enslaved to a job. Because when you have savings, you could then choose if you want to be at this place, if it's a right fit for you, if it's something that you want. But that only comes from cultivating that. So you are worthy of the money that you make, and savings is the way that you do that for yourself. And so, like I said, instead of all the things that I just wanted to get down, gratitude practice and saving 10% will just change in a big way, just how you then approach the rest of your life when it comes to work and everything else. And so, Kieran, yeah, I see you have a question.
So one, that was brilliant. So thank you for that.
You're
Um,
welcome.
Carol and Hannah will know this. I think I'm a little bit in a different scenario to a lot of the people that will one be watching this later on, because I went to university. I know a lot of the guys on here are like 18, coming out of college or school and stuff. So I've had to sort of learn, well, I've been taught, not even learn, it's been drilled into myself of earning money is the big thing now. You've left university, it's now time to get that high paying job. And thankfully, as I said to Carol and Hannah this week, I was lucky enough that this week I fell into the job that now, one, I love, and it pays me the big bucks, which is great. So
Congratulations.
I didn't know this chat was happening today, but it was a nice sort of reminder I to put money away and start the savings. And but yeah, it was, I've forgotten what my question was now. I've completely lost track of where I was going with this. On the 10%, um, I have an unhealthy addiction with impulse buying.
Mhm.
Do you have any means or tips or tricks to not necessarily curb the impulse buying, but maybe stop dipping into my savings to splash on those impulse buys? I have an unhealthy addiction with buying trainers every month.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well,
the savings is something that I really need to work on.
I do have something for that, because you're not alone. Impulse buying is quite common. And like I said, the world is actually promoting it in that way. So, right, like we have credit cards, you have money at all your disposal. When you are buying your trainers and everything else and like these things, are you using it on a credit card, or are you using your money?
So I have a credit card, but it's simply for phone, petrol, and I'm saving my credit to put down my mortgage on my house and trying to build my credit score that way. It's coming out of my current account off my debit card, so out of my wage.
Okay, so you pay it off in full. It's not like you're carrying a balance.
No, the only debt I carry is my student loan, which in the UK doesn't really come off as a debt. It's more of an additional tax.
Cool. I just wanted to see how the spending, what has happening, if it was happening, great, because some people will use credit and
Mm-mm.
overextend. So this is just more of, so how do you have your account set up? So you receive your paycheck, right?
So
And you pay your bills. Do you just have one account, one checking account?
I have my current account, which my wage goes into. I have a cash ISA, which I've had since I was a baby, which I don't have access to because my mum still looks after it for me. Um, and then I have a savings account. It's another current account, but I sort of class it as a savings account.
Mhm.
I sort of transfer money across to that, but I have access to that. That's the one I struggle to sort of keep in check, because it's like, oh, but it's just there, and I can take it and buy these instead.
Right. So here's what it is. The reason it's actually quite natural what you're doing, because your accounts aren't set up in a way to set you up to win. So the thing that I always suggest for anyone is you should always have, at the bare minimum, three accounts. You
Okay.
should have your checking account that your
Hmm.
check gets deposited into and
Hmm.
that you pay your bills out of. And the bills that I'm talking about are the ones that are, like you said, petrol, if your rent, mortgage, whatever utilities that you pay, the bills that I call like they're fixed that come in and out, and all of those should come out of this one account. You should then have a second checking account. And this should be considered like if you have your debit card or your cash card account, this
Hmm.
should be this account. And what should happen is it should be separate from where you get your deposit in. Because what you should be doing is you get paid, you designate a certain amount of money that goes into that account,
Hmm.
right? And this is what I consider like fun. The intention of that second account is that you're meant to spend that money. Why else are you working? I get so that you can make more money and save and buy the house, but it's also so that you can get the trainers if you want them. Like if
Yeah.
you're having like it is also that's the fun side of it. The reason why it's not fun is because it's not set up in a way that you could feel that way. It's like every time you take money from your savings, it's like you're stealing from yourself. There's just
It
this guilt.
that's it. It's almost like I go in and I go, right, I've put £200 this month into it, and then by the end of the month, it's like, oh, it's down to 50 because I bought another pair of trainers. I almost feel guilty about it.
So the way that you could stop doing that is to set up the second account and designate know how much money you're making, right? So let
Hmm.
me just get, and then the third account you should have is a savings account, which you already
Hmm.
do, right? So the one that's missing is the cash account that you're meant to spend.
Okay.
And then transfer the money over into a savings. I mean, I don't know what your options are in the UK, but if also another like money hack that you could do is get an online account and have
Yeah.
it be separate so that you're not staring at that money in your savings as if it's available.
That's what I do. I bank with Starling, which is completely online, and I love it. It's great. And then I have a Lloyd's account, which is just a normal bank
Okay.
account over here, and I move it into that. So they actually are in two separate branches.
Okay.
So it's not as if I can log onto my bank and swipe across and see it. I have to log onto another app.
Okay. But it still doesn't distract you. The whole
Yeah.
thing is to now have that second account. And so
Okay.
once you have that second account, like at Starling, open it up, or Lloyd's, whichever one is the physical one, open up that second checking account.
Okay.
So that's like the first step. And the point of that is for you to spend that money. But now for you to spend that money, you need to know what your numbers are. So
Hmm.
this is like the second part of it, right? Like how do you know how much money to put in there? Know what your expenses are. Do you know what your numbers are every month?
Yeah, I budget myself. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to Excel, and I set everything
Oh
out
my,
in
love it.
rent, bills, all of it, savings, the lot. It all comes out, and it tallies it all for me. But it's going to be different this month because it's changed. I've just changed onto a new contract with my new employer, so it's gone up. So there should be more to play with, which will be great. But I want to put more of it away than start spending the same.
Exactly. So what you do is write out, if you have that budget, know what all of those numbers come out to. The way I like to work expenses is that they should really go into like three categories. Your what I call wants, or your needs actually, right? You need certain things. Part of the mindset thing is we're like, oh, I need that. I need those trainers. I need, you don't, no, you don't. You don't need that unless you don't have anything else in your closet to wear. You don't really need that thing. So learning that it's a want versus a need, you need your groceries, you
Hmm.
need the roof over your head, you
Hmm.
need your water, all of those things. So know what your need number is, then what your wants are, right? If there's even subscriptions, everything that that's another thing that's happening. You could have Netflix, you could have all these other things. They start to add it up. Write them all down, know what they are, know what your numbers are, right?
Hmm.
If there's, and then put in there the savings amount. So
Hmm.
10% to the savings. So if you're making, 5,000 pounds, then you make sure that then there's $500 from that's going into that savings. The other thing that I want to get into, and I'll just go into that, is also like learning about retirement. And I think you said you have like an ISA, and I realize like in the UK, that's the same as an IRA here. Because when you start to invest when you're younger, interest works in your favor. Like it's super important now at this age to save. And and I have an article that I could share with you to share with everyone who's just in there, because it was something that a professor said to me when I was in college. And I think it's when I first started, it was in 19. He said, if you take anything from this class, he's like, open up an IRA, which is it was an ISA, and start saving. He's like, because at this age, when you then can cash it out at 65, because you started so young, the interest starts to work in your favor. And so the way that it works, if you actually started, and this is an article called Rich Man Poor Dad, and they show an example. It's great books and just all of that. At age 19, if for 7 consecutive years, and I know your age is different, but don't let that, it's just the point of looking at the interest. If you just invest $2,000 every year, so that's $14,000, and not invest anything else at age 65, and yes, it has to grow at a certain interest rate, but you could then net and have $893,000 sitting in a bank account, and all you invested was $14,000. So like, it's like someone saying, I'll give you 800 or $900,000, but all you have to give me is $14,000. It's like, whoa, it's like too good to be true kind of thing. And it actually does. It's compounding interest working in your favor. And so the longer amount of time, the better it is. So the reason why I'm saying this is because I just want you to see how, we could depend on the government and all of these things. And here in the US, it's Social Security. Is it going to be there? Are pensions going? Secure your own future too. So if you are getting, more money, you could split your savings now into two different things. You could even do 10%, right, to that savings account that you have. And then you could just do another 5% to invest in that ISA.
So,
And start letting it grow for you.
no, so that's it. I do put money into my ISA. My other thought, I was speaking to my director about, is my boss, and he was like, he invests in stocks, and I know it can be quite a murky industry. You've got to have some sort of know-how about it. Is it? It's always something I thought I've looked at, but never sort of been comfortable enough to go into and delve into. Sort of understandably scared about it.
And anything that you do that's new, you're going to be scared in. Again, like, I'm not a financial advisor. I feel like more of what it is that I do is just being like the common person in the world navigating it. The way that I started with stocks is like people around me knew about it, and I would just start asking questions. I just allowed myself to be curious versus being an expert, right? It's like, what's that? And I heard about drip investment funds. I'm like, oh, what's that? Like, there's some stocks that pay you money. I'm like, what do you mean they pay you money? They're called dividends, and you get that money. And then what you can do is that you don't have to take that money. You could reinvest it. It gets reinvested and it buys you more stocks. So a drip fund is another thing that's really cool to look at. And there's some stocks that are actually really safe. The way that I always say when it comes to stocks and how I started playing, use an amount of money that you're comfortable with. You kind of do have to look at the stock market as gambling in a way. If that's not your expertise, some people really do use it like that. Look at it as that if that money goes, would it hurt you? Right? Like, it's money that's meant to grow. So make sure that it's not like all of your savings. Like, you should always have that money on cash, have an amount that you're willing to play with. And then what are some things? Oh, you like trainers, right? So what are the companies that you like to buy from?
Uh, most Nike, Adidas, Vans. It's something I've always thought of looking into, as going down that market of invested in the brands that I wear or I like. But again, it's like I've never even known how to navigate it. So it might be something I have to sort of, not don't want to take a course on, but maybe ask my director of how do I do it.
You have the world of Google at your disposal. Simple enough what you could just do. And so here's a simple, right? Even for you to get started, like after this call, you get off. What you do is you could go into Google, you look up Nike, right? Then their stocks, you look up what the ticker is. And what you do is you ask for the chart and you see what their growth pattern is over the past year. And you see if the stocks have gone up, go down. The other thing I would say is always look into whatever company you're looking for that they pay you, right? You always want to know that they're paying you a dividend. And you could just look. And then from there, you just start looking at, oh, is this a good? And when you do the search too, articles are just going to start coming up. And so you look at like which ones you know the names for that are reputable that you want to follow, or just read, and you start reading into it. So that's how you start doing it. Things that you're interested in are companies usually that have been solid or are doing something good. And then kind of when you spend money on them, you're like, I'm investing in myself a little bit. It's a little bit of a hack, but it is really like how you start really growing your wealth too is by investing. It's not just by saving, and it is going into those ways and just learning about it. But what I would say to you is just like allow yourself to be curious. You're not meant to be the expert, and you start by just starting, right? And you have like beautiful internet that just will have this information for you. And I always say, if you're going to invest in things that you like, even if there's technology. That's how I started. Like, I'm obsessed with Apple because this is when it first, you know, like I said, 2000 graduated college. So when everything like, oh my God, the iPod and just like this iPhone could do all this stuff. Oh my God. And like I needed it immediately in an Apple computer. I'm like, wow, you know what? I keep buying all of their stuff. Like, let me start investing in them.
I'm going
And
to
then it
share a
just,
little story on that. So when I was working at Yellow Pages a long time ago, when it was a thing, before the internet, they made you go into a pension. And they put the minimum amount into it, but it was what they call a final salary pension, which were the best kind of pensions you could get in the UK at the time. So I'd forgotten about this thing, and then it came up a few years ago, and they wanted to get rid of it. The new owners didn't want to run a pension anymore, so they gave us the option to have it and to put it into a stocks and shares pension. And it was worth £250,000. I was like, oh my God. And I talked to my son about this and how that had been, invested through the years. He set himself up an online, like on his phone, investing, and he puts £300 a month in it, which is about a third of what he earns actually. So he's quite committed to this, but did exactly what Tonia said. Looked at companies he was interested in, subject areas he knew a little bit about. He's only been doing it for 3 months and he's made 25% increase on his money in 3 months. So I wish I'd started at 19 like he is, because I'd have a lot more than that by now. But yeah, the compounding effect is amazing. My mum was left some money by a great aunt and she sat it in her bank account for 10 years. She earned about £10 on it in that time. I finally managed to get her to invest in a stocks and shares investment ISA with my financial advisor, and it's now worth 140,000. It was 100,000, so she's made 40 grand in the last 7 years, where it would have been about, like I say, about 10 quid if she'd left it in a bank account. So it's just, yeah, you have to hold your nerve if the market dips a bit.
yes.
Hold your nerve because it always goes back up again.
But that's, like you said, that's the whole, markets do that, right? It's like, how do the rich get rich? They invest because they know how. They know how to play it. It's also looking at it too. When the market goes down, when do you go shopping? When there's a sale. When the market goes down, that's a sale happening. It's also like, do your research now too, so that when that happens, you also know that's the opportunity to buy things and to get them at the lower price, because it's always goes back up. That's the wave. Like, that's the flow of money. The whole point of it is like, do you have a balanced, what they call a portfolio? I hate that word portfolio because it just sounds so like, oh, I don't know what that. Are you just balanced with your money where you feel secure? Do you have a certain amount? So even with the savings that you have too, you should always at least have, right? There's milestones that I say to hit $1,000 at the bare minimum to have in that account that you do not spend. 1 month of expenses, 3 months, and at most, I would even say like 6 months of expenses, right? This is how then you don't feel like a job is paying you and you're not desperate anymore for that paycheck, which then allows you to just wait for those opportunities when you want to go to other things. This is where I'm just going to even jump up. This is where you open up like a second savings. And then the point is for that savings to be spent. That's for your long-term stuff. So you don't feel like, how when you wanted your trainers, or just now you start to get bigger, like if you wanted to get a car or there's the down payment for a house. The point of that account is to spend that money. A lot of the things that we do is we have one savings account. We build it. We need the down payment for the house. Wipe out that account. Now you have a mortgage, you have more expenses, and there's no money to back you up. And it feels like there's an elephant sitting on your chest. So that's why I say savings is so important, because I call this your financial security account. This is what creates your peace of mind, because I actually call mine the bank of Tonia, because it's your bank, right? It's the bank of you. So whenever you need money, you have it. You don't have to go to a bank and do for that. And so this is how you start to take control back. This is why investing then, it's not that big of a deal, because you have that money in the savings and you invest a certain amount of money that you feel comfortable with, that you're playing with. So the money that you invest could even be that second account, like the long-term savings could be the investment account, because the purpose of it is to just grow it into more. And if it goes down, like, okay, you know, it's not like it's the money that was sitting there to protect me for when things go up and down. As we see with the climate of the world, things happen in an instant and things change very quickly. So to have that security is super important. So I would say, like, have the investment account as like the long-term savings and allow yourself to just play. Even if you're into sustainability and like energy and just solar panels, when you start going down the rabbit hole, even if there's technology that you realize like there's chips in the phone that people use, and it's like, who makes those chips? And you think about how many phones are out there, like that's never going to go away. Maybe I should invest in the people who make the chips, or the glass on an iPhone. That's another company is making that. And you're like, oh, maybe I'll invest. So that's what I'm saying. Just allow yourself to explore and just be curious. You don't have to master anything at this point. You could just allow yourself to just be curious for the information and then just go from there. There is no losing in that game, because if you know the amount of money that you're designated, you're being responsible. You are knowing that that is the intention of it.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And so I don't know, I mean, I know it's a lot of people going to be watching the recording, or if there's like any other questions that you have. I feel like I have said a lot, which is normally what I do, is just like try to get everything in that I possibly can.
No, it's great. Thank you. I think the tip about having at least 3 months expenses covered is massive, because of the emotional impact it has. When you know, doesn't matter what happens at the end of this month, because you've got that cushion, whether it's 3 months, whether it's 6 months. We tried to keep 6 months in there. It's just like, oh, you can breathe. You can breathe.
Yep. And that's why I would say for the specifically, and that's what I'm saying, even if it's not 18, I feel like for in your 20s itself, like I always had like a really great relationship with money because I just nurtured the habit of savings. I didn't realize that that wasn't something that was the norm. And it just afforded me so much freedom and to just play like, oh, I don't like this job, I'm going to jump to another one, because at the end of the day, it's not like, you know, I can't cover my bills. I'm not happy here. Let me go to somewhere else that's going to value my work ethic and pay me for what it is. And so I'm saying savings is such a huge one. Anytime you look it up, the rule of thumb is 10%. But my whole thing is like, if 10% doesn't work, then don't be like, oh, I can't save. Save anything. What you do, like, you know, it was just saying, even to know what your expenses are, whatever's remaining, keep a portion of it to yourself. Nurture the savings. And if 3 months looks like it's too hard to do, or even 1 month because you have nothing, 1,000. Start with 1,000. There's a statistic in my book. Numbers really don't, funny enough, stick in my head, but I think it's 67. It's based in the US, but 67% of people in the US have less than $1,000 saved, and of half of that, none. So this habit, I say this for that it's not something that's being nurtured or being taught. We're taught to just spend, but this is also what's creating that desperation. And when you're first starting out, like that gift that you could give to yourself is so important. $5. I don't care. Really, it's not about the amount. The first thing you want to do is just start creating that habit. It's the habit that you have to just start doing, and just doing like, oh, your employer pays you. It's your responsibility to pay you yourself. Your savings is your paycheck to yourself. And if you just start looking at it that way, it might just be like, oh, that's like a lot of fun. Like, yeah, I kind of like worked really hard. Like I deserve to keep some of this money. And so that's really what your savings is. It's you're paying yourself because you're worth that amount of money, and it creates so much peace of mind, like incredible peace of mind. So yeah, like I said, there's a couple of things that I said, if you remember, but like that one is a really big one, to have you just feel like you could go through life without feeling like everything is so serious, because it could just be when first starting out, like, what am I going to do? It's like, I'm 40 and I'm still like, what am I going to do? I don't know. So this illusion too, that you're going to figure it all out. Illusion. You're not going to figure it all out. Just allow yourself to follow and do the things that you need to do, but it's okay if you don't know. Just, you know, as I said, follow the breadcrumbs.
Are you on LinkedIn, Tonia?
I am on LinkedIn.
Right. So guys, if you go and connect with Tonia and maybe leave her a testimonial on her LinkedIn if you've enjoyed today's session, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Any other questions anybody's got before we wrap it up for today?
Yeah, and I just want to offer too, like I have my book out there. It's like $25. I have all of my worksheets that I do with my clients. I literally put it together because I wanted this information available and affordable for people.
Where is your book? Is it on Amazon?
It is on, I don't know if you see it because I have my blurred background,
Uh,
but it's on Amazon. And I will, Hannah, I could even email it to you. So you could get it on Barnes and Noble, Amazon. It's available on Amazon in the UK. So you could get it and it's there. But like I said, it has all of the worksheets that I do with my clients, and it teaches both how to use everything. And so the little tidbits that I was just giving you, it's all in there. So
fab.
if you want to learn more, please. And also reach out to me on my social. Like I have LinkedIn. I'll give you my website if you want to speak more. Like I'm just open to give information. That's, my joy is to just do that. So just thank you all for being here
Thank you.
today and letting me speak to you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much.